Hi guys! So today's video is possibly one of the biggest, if not the biggest, TBR video I've ever done, that I've ever set myself. I don't know where this ambition has come from because I didn't really read as much as I have done in previous months in May, no complaints, but it wasn't some completely out there amount that I'm going to continue with in June. In fact, I'm really setting myself some high goals in June, and that's because I'm actually going to attempt to participate in 3 different readathons. So all these readathons are quite different, they have quite different requirements, and they take place over different lengths of time, and I thought that they all sounded so much fun. One of them, in fact, I'm actually participating in hosting some reading sprints for as well, so that should be fantastic. But because of the whole 3 readathons in a month thing, my TBR spiraled. I have so many books I want to read, either to fulfill themes or challenges, and some of them I have to read if I want to complete the readathons. So wish me luck, and now I'm going to let you know what books I'll be picking up in June to participate in these readathons. So the first readathon I want to talk about is the Myth Take Reads readathon. So the Myth Take Reads group is like a book club where they have monthly reads focused on retellings of myths and fairy tales and folklores and fiction, and it's run by some fantastic booktubers I'll link down below. But in the month of June they're hosting their first ever readathon, which is so much fun. It's such a fun concept. It's a month-long readathon, so this is one I'll be participating in throughout the month. And the only requirement is that you read 4 books for this readathon. They have come up with this incredible cast of different like fairy tale, folklore, mythological based character types, and you have to pick which one you want to be. And in order to become that character during the month, you have to read the 4 books, or the 4 categories of books that are required for this character. And I basically decided to remain on brand here and aim for becoming a goddess, since I'm into my Greek mythology, and for that there are, like I said, 4 categories that I need to complete in order to win. But there's also some extra little points involved in this readathon, which includes the fact that you have to read the books you put on your TBR. Unless you DNF one. If you DNF a book, you can swap it out for another book, but you have to at least try to read all the books you've set yourself. This isn't just a, I'll maybe try for these books. You can't change your mind, which is a fun but intimidating concept, and you also have to read them in the order of the categories. So you have to read them 1 to 4, you can't like mix them up during the month, which, although means you're not reading too much, makes it more of a challenge because of these rules, and I think that's a lot of fun and should be fun to participate in throughout the month. This is also the readathon I'm going to be hosting sprints for. So on the weekend of the 20th, so Saturday the 20th of June, I am going to be over on the Myth Take Reads Twitter hosting reading sprints, and then also potentially hosting a live reading on Instagram, so like a live video where we all just sort of like sit and chill and read together. There'll be a few different things, and I'll keep you updated on my Twitter and on the Myth Take Reads Twitter, so please do get involved. It's such a fun concept, so much imagination and so much magic. But now I'm going to let you know the books I plan on reading. So the first challenge for the goddess category is to read a book where the main character is not a human. And I'm not sure 100% if my book's a little bit of a cheat, but there's a reason that this has to be my first book because of another readathon I'm participating in, and that is Witches of Ash and Rune by E. Lattimore. Now the reason I'm squeezing this into this challenge is because the protagonist is a witch. So they're more than human. I feel like witch is the kind of magical category where the character is also often a human as well. But I feel like the fact that they're a witch means they're not like a traditional human, and that's why I'm counting it. I am sorry if that is slightly cheating, but I'm also, and we'll get into my TBR for that, participating in the Queer Lit Readathon, which takes place in the first week of June. It's one of my favourite readathons on Booktube. I participate in it every single time, and I'm super excited for it. And it means that the books I'll be reading in the first half of the month all need to be LGBTQ+, and because I also need to read the books for Myth Take Reads in order, I kind of need my first book to fit into LGBTQ+ as well, which Witches of Ash and Rune does. So this one is apparently a blend of modern witchcraft. It's set in a contemporary setting but with like ancient Celtic folklore, and I know Ashley, one of the hosts of Myth Take Reads, loved this book, so it comes on high recommendation. And we follow a 17-year-old girl who has been raised as a part of a coven presumably, and she's sort of like ascending the ranks of witchcraft and like taking on her training and becoming a full-fledged witch in the modern day. So she's going through all of that like magical stuff, but at the same time she's also come out as bisexual. I think perhaps she doesn't come out through her own choice, and she's dealing with her OCD. And minus growing up in a magical coven, I pretty much relate to all of that, so I'm super excited to read this one and have such high hopes. Conveniently, the book I'm reading for the next challenge could also be read for the Queer Lit Readathon because it has LGBTQ plus characters, but I don't need to read it in that week as long as it's the second book I read in my 4-book TBR during the month. I feel this is so complicated because I've muddled all these readathons together, but it is Crier's War by Nina Varela, and this is an Asian-inspired fantasy novel which fulfills the challenge of reading a book with foiling on the cover. So this gorgeous hardback edition has this it's a sort of like gold and silver, like pewtery foiling design that I love. This was a gift from my wonderful friend Tasman on Booktube, who I'll link down below. She very, very kindly sent it to me from my Amazon wishlist, and I was just like really not expecting it, but I am going to prioritise it for this readathon. And I don't actually think I have a lot of other foiling books available at the moment, so it was pretty perfect. This one takes us back to a sort of otherworld fantasy setting, which may even blend in a little bit of sci-fi. There's these creatures called automate who have overthrown the humans of the kingdom and taken over, and our main character has decided to infiltrate the automate in order to kill their princess, but potentially falls in love with her instead, and I am so here for that subplot. So cannot wait for this. Then the third book I need to read in my quest to become a goddess is to read the highest rated book on my TBR. So this is where I don't actually know what's next, because I have a TBR shelf on Goodreads of books I currently have access to, and I think it's around 50 books or so. I'm going to go onto that shelf now and order the books by highest average rating to lowest, and then we'll find out together what I have to read. I was mistaken, there's 61 books on this, so actually quite a few more than 50. Okay, so it's currently organised by date added. I need to organise it by average rating. Dun 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 dun. What's it going to be? Feel kind of like anxious. Oh, okay. Oh wow. This is really good actually, because it's a non-fiction book, and I have been letting my non-fiction reading slide a little bit recently. These aren't in exact order because there's 2 non-fiction books at the top of this list. Hopefully you're seeing it, I've recorded it. And those are Pain and Prejudice by Gabrielle Jackson and Unicorn by Amru Al-Kadi. And it's organised it as Pain and Prejudice first, but actually when you look at the average ratings, Unicorn is higher. It has a 4.29 and Pain and Prejudice has a 4.27. So I think that means Unicorn is the book I should be reading. And this is the story of a Muslim drag queen. I've heard really good things about it, and I've got it on audiobook, which is one of my favourite ways to experience non-fiction. And then conveniently, the 4th challenge is to read a random book from your TBR, so to randomise your TBR. And I think there is an option to organise my TBR shelf by random and then just see what book comes up first. I am sure there is a random option when you do it on a desktop, but I'm not getting the random option on my phone, so maybe I should just pick a random one of these categories and see what comes up first. I could do it by read count and see just what comes up. That would be random anyway, so let's do that. Okay, so the book that comes up when I randomly organise it that way, which I don't even know how they decide what comes up, is Tender Morsels by Margot Lanigan. That's actually a book that's been on my TBR for such a long time. So that's quite good because I've been meaning to read it and I haven't gotten around to it in years. It's been sort of abandoned in Edinburgh and I forgot I even owned it, and recently added it to my TBR because I spotted it on my bookshelf. It's a retelling, I think, of the Snow White fairy tale, potentially the Snow White and Rose Red fairy tale. So I would really like to read that actually and finally experience Margot Lanigan as well, who's an author I've always kind of meant to read. That's fun, but that means those are the 4 books for my Myth Take Reads TBR. I have to read them in order and I have to read them all to become a goddess. Unless, like I said, I DNF one, then I can swap something in, and I will let you know throughout the month how I'm getting on with that. But then that brings me to the second readathon that I want to talk about, which is the Queer Lit Readathon. I've already mentioned it, but from the 31st of May to the 6th of June, one of my favourite booktube readathons is taking place, and it's all about reading LGBTQ plus literature. So I have collected together a few books that are currently on my TBR that I'd like to get to that have LGBTQ plus characters and themes. I probably won't read all of these in that week because it is only 7 days, but I will try and get to as many as possible, and a few of them are short, so that would be fun. Already I've mentioned that I'll be reading Witches of Ashen Rune. I could read Crier's War, but I feel like I'm going to leave that and try and read one book a week for the Myth Take Readathon, so that means so far I've only really got one book on my Queer Lit Readathon TBR. I do, however, want to read Burning Roses, which is a Tor novella, so a little bit of a shorter one. And I recently got this for review off of NetGalley. I love the Tor novella series. I always discover fantastic new authors from it, and there's quite like a fair bit of LGBTQ plus representation, so that's really fun. But this is actually an Asian-inspired retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. So we've definitely got a fair few sort of fairy tale, folk tale retellings going on so far this month, which is fun given that it's also the Myth Take Reads Readathon, and I believe it features a female-female romance. So that is one of the books that I really want to prioritise that week. I'd also like to carry on with the Lumberjanes comic book series. So I haven't actually read any comic books in the past sort of week or so, and I'm kind of missing them because I was really binging them for a while. And Lumberjanes is a sort of, I would say, a middle grade like comic book series. It's sort of for all ages, it really is. It really sort of defies age categories, but it's appropriate for all ages, which I think is why I would consider it middle grade. And it's about a group of girls at a sort of like summer camp, a bit like Scouts, but called Lumberjanes, when they end up encountering loads of like weird, wacky, magical things in forests and getting embroiled in adventures, and it's so much fun. I've read the first 2 volumes on Scribd so far. The 3rd volume is available, and there has been sort of hints at a budding relationship between 2 of the young like women, and sort of like their first romance with each other, and that's lovely and so nice to see LGBTQ plus representation and like queer women representation at a younger age, because it's quite common to see like cute first romances between heterosexual couples in literature, whereas it would be nice to see more that come under the LGBTQ plus spectrum, because a lot of us who consider ourselves LGBTQ plus identify as that from quite young ages, so that's really wonderful. We then have No Man of Women Born by Anna Mardall, and this one was actually a gift from Ashley as well. She picked this when we did a book haul swap, and did I already say it's a collection of short stories? They're fantasy short stories, and all of these stories in this book feature trans or non-binary main characters, which I think is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to try this author's writing and try a fantasy short story collection. It's been a long time since I've read one of those, so this should be a lot of fun, and it's really nice to see that representation, so looking forward to that. And it's also another one that's not too long, so works well with my sort of trying to read as much in a week for the Queer Lit Readathon plan. We then, on my list, which I keep referring to over here, have Dread Nation, which is an actual full-length novel, so might take me a little bit longer, but I recently picked this one up. I hadn't realised until I started seeing advertisements for the sequel that this featured a female-female romance, so I'm so excited about that, and it made me more excited to read it. It's an alternate history novel with zombies. So usually I don't really go for zombie books, but this one sounds really intriguing and I've heard really great things. It's set in the American South, but instead of there being slave plantations, all of the like black citizens of America are trained to become zombie hunters and zombie killers and protect the wealthy white people from the zombies. And in that respect, it explores a lot of really pertinent issues of race in history and the contemporary world, and I'm so interested in it. I also, like I said, believe it features a queer character and potentially female-female romance. I'm not sure how that kind of comes about in the book, but it does seem to be listed as LGBTQ plus on Goodreads by numerous people. So I'm kind of just here to experience whatever that has to offer. And that would be my Queer Lit Readathon TBR. I think that's 4 or 5 books, so enough to be getting to in a week. Let me know if you'd like me to vlog that week and what I'm reading, and just sort of tell you about it as I get on. I think I've vlogged every other Queer Lit Readathon in the past, so might be fun for consistency's sake, but I will actually be participating in a 3rd readathon during that week. So not only is the first week of June Queer Lit Readathon, and I'll also be participating in Myth Take Reads, which then goes on throughout the rest of the month, but I also will be participating in the first half of the Feel Good-a-thon. So the Feel Good-a-thon is a readathon all about feeling good, taking care of your mental health, and it's fun because there's not just reading challenges, but there's also like suggestions and challenges for taking care of yourself and just sort of like giving yourself a little bit of time off and being kind to yourself and just doing what works for you. So it's a lovely, lovely sentiment. It's also a 2-week long readathon, so it takes place over the first 2 weeks of June, which is why it also overlaps with the Queer Lit Readathon. So I will exclusively, like I said, be reading LGBTQ+ books in that first week, and then in week 2 I'll be reading a mixture of things, some of which might be LGBTQ+ and some of which might not, but that will hopefully tick off the challenges. So I've decided to base my TBR around the challenges for the Feel Good-a-thon because I thought that would be fun, but as it is the Feel Good-a-thon and it's all about self-care, I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself. This just gives me some nice options to look forward to. And challenge number 1 is to read a book you have high hopes for. So for this I want to read a historical romance novel called Bringing Down the Duke, which is set in the late 1800s in London and follows a suffragette main character, which I've mentioned before. I'm just super excited for a historical romance where the female protagonist is a suffragette and is engaging with the sort of contemporary gender issues and politics of her time, whilst also just going off on probably like a fun-filled adventure and falling in love. Like light-hearted, but also mixed with something a little bit more like real and serious. And it's also the Feminist Orchestra Book Club read for May and June. So I needed to read it in June anyway because I haven't read it in May, but I've sort of put it off with the intention of reading it for this readathon. So I'm really, really excited for that. It should be a quick, fun, fast-paced read, and then I can chat about it with everyone on the Feminist Orchestra Book Club Goodreads group. So yeah, excited about that one. We then have a short book, and because this overlaps with Queer Lit Readathon, I'm also overlapping books here, and I'm considering Burning Roses a short book because it's only around like 120 pages. So there we go, I get to sort of tick two TBRs and 2 readathons off with that challenge. We then have Finish or Continue a Series, and for this I'm thinking I will read The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, which is the 3rd and final instalment in her Truly Devious series. So I read books 1 and 2 earlier in May, I think it was. I've lost track of time, it's all blended together, but I did a reading vlog where I read them and I loved them, and I've been waiting to read book 3 and finish the series. I'm really excited to read it, but I'm also kind of sad that it will be the end of the series, and it just seems perfect timing with this readathon because it's exactly the kind of escapism I'm enjoying right now, which is YA thrillers for whatever reason, and I have the audiobook on Scribd. So we have a protagonist, Stevie, who goes to a boarding school with a history of crime dating back to the 1930s that she's determined to solve now in the contemporary world, but then some mysterious things start happening in her time period. So it's like a blend of cold case and modern mystery, and I really, really enjoy the series. We then have a book with your favourite trope, and I would say my 2 favourite things in books are either books with dragons in them or fancy books with female-female romances. I mean, books with dragons and female-female romances, perfect. But because of that, I'm going with female-female romance. Like, what is and isn't a trope? That's just something I like in books, so I'm picking that, and there are a few of those, as you already know, on my TBR for the Queer Lit Readathon, and that shouldn't be a problem. So one of those should tick that box off if that is the trope I'm going with. Trope seems like a weird word for that, but you get what I'm going for. We then have a book you picked up because you love the cover. And for this, I'm planning on reading The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. So I have actually started this. I've read the first couple of chapters, but I've put it down with the intention of reading it for this readathon because it is stunning. This cover is 50% of the reason I bought this book. It also sounds brilliant, but I probably wouldn't have paid it as much attention if it didn't have a brilliant cover, and that's where book design comes in handy. So this is also, conveniently, another book I need to read for a book club, which is my Patreon book club. So over on Patreon, we are reading a book every 3 months together, and this one I need to have read by the end of June in order to upload a video review and discussion at the beginning of July. We picked it through a poll. If you want to participate, I'll link my Patreon down below, but I have been really keen to read this for a while, and I was super pleased that it was the one that we picked. It is a book that mashes together so many classic crime and horror novels, from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Island of Dr. Moreau, Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes, all in one place, but following a protagonist who is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, and kind of just like elements of all of those like mysteries coming together, and I'm so here for it. We then have read one of the hosts' favourite books. So for this readathon, the hosts all made little graphics of their favourite books. You can check them all out online. I will have all the relevant information linked down below, but there were two in particular that appealed to me, that I'd sort of been considering reading anyway and thought, hey, do you know what, if they're someone's favourite books, then I should check them out. One is Middle Game by Seanan McGuire, and the other is If We Were Villains, which is a sort of dark academia book in the vein of The Secret History. I haven't decided which one I'm going to go for yet, but those are the two I've noted down and will see if I can get access to during the month, or maybe treat myself to. So those are the ones I'm considering. I'll probably only read one. Then we have to buddy read a book. Now obviously I'm already reading 2 books for 2 different book clubs. Those could easily work. But I do also have plans on buddy reading a book with my friend Tasman, so that would also fulfill that, and that's A Pinch of Magic, which is a middle grade fantasy book that I have on audiobook on Scribd. I do have a physical copy, but it's in London, so I don't have it at the moment. But thankfully the audiobook is on Scribd, and it just sounds so magical and cute. It's about sisters, and I'm really excited about it. I've heard great things, and it'll be nice to read it with Tasman. It also then works really well for the next challenge, which is to read a book younger you would have loved. And younger me was all about the fantasy, so a middle grade fantasy novel is exactly the kind of thing I would have adored. There are 2 more challenges for the Feel Good-a-thon, one of which is to read a book by an author you've never read before. Tons of these books would work. There are plenty of books on this list I have never read books by the authors of before, so I don't think I really need to stipulate one over another. And then read an old favourite, or reread, sorry, an old favourite, which I haven't actually set anything for. I'm divided on whether I will do this challenge or not, because I have to be really in the mood to reread something. I have to sort of be like overwhelmed by like a desire to return to an old favourite, and the only thing I'm really craving a reread of at the moment is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier, but I want to turn that into a whole sort of like read along buddy read online, and I want to give people notice in advance, so I'm thinking I'll do that in July. Let me know if you'd be interested in a read along throughout the month of July for Daughter of the Forest, because I really want to reread it and sort of read it with some other people. But other than that, there's nothing I'm really in the mood for rereading at the moment. That might change during the readathon, but it's the Feel Good-a-thon, so I'm not putting pressure on myself. And that is all of the books I want to read in June. No mean amount, is it? And most of those I want to read in the first 2 weeks, so goodness only knows what I'll read in the second half if I can really carry through that momentum. Who knows? I will definitely have to film some reading vlogs to keep me accountable, but I'd love to know if you're participating in any of these readathons. What do you plan on reading for them, or what do you just plan on reading in general? And let me know if you've read any of the books I've mentioned and what you thought of them. There's just so much to talk about here. I'm excited to see what you have to say and chat with you, and other than that, I think I've covered everything. I think I've been here for a while, and this video is probably quite long, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys.